powered by the Inside the Birds podcast. Now, live from inside the Matt Black Kia Studios, it's Football at 4.
Football at 4 powered by the Inside the Birds podcast on a happy hour Friday. And that means Adam Caplan is here from InsideTheBirds.com and the Inside the Birds podcast. He's brought to you by Bet365. Whatever the sport, whatever the moment, it's never ordinary at Bet365. We got so much to dive into for Football at 4. Eagles beat the Vikings. Some takeaways from Adam Caplan. We'll get his thoughts on the game last night. Adam, on a night where the offense scored 34 points. But people thought that the offense had issues last night. Fair, and remember the old show Kids Court on Nickelodeon? Fair or unfair?
No, it's fair. Look, we all saw it. Look, 34 is great. But, there are issues. For the second straight week, Jalen Hurts did not play well. I would say last week it was worse. We had John D. Flippo for our Patreon subscribers. He's going to be reviewing the Eagles tape each week. So there's some throws that he missed, no doubt, last week. He also said, he described and understood how tough it is to go up against Bill Belichick, because John did that in 2018. He was the Vikings OC. And then, Greg Cosell and Jason Avant had some great information on our pregame show, which you could still see, by the way. And then, of course, our postgame show, which you could see with Mosher and Clay Harbor. And we went over all this. But to sum it up, Mike, it's great that they scored 34 points. Jake Elliott, that's 61-yard field goal, the second 61-yard field goal in his career, tying his career long. But I didn't think that was going to make it right off his foot. It looked like it was wobbly, but somehow he powered it through. It was pretty incredible. But that was obviously one of the highlights. But the bottom line is they won. They won by 6. We thought the game would go over the total. It did. Great night for passing the football. They tried early, Mike. They tried early a lot. It didn't work. DeAndre Swift went off. He should have played last week, which we said that was the one real issue we had with the personnel usage. It was just ridiculous that he barely played. That was obviously a mistake. He made up for their mistake and just had a career day. He was incredible. Also give their line credit, Mike. So there were some positives, but the passing game's got to pick up here. This is a team that wants to throw the football, and there's just something missing there.
There is. What's wrong with the passing game? Is it coaching related? Are you seeing with Hurts? I mean, Hurts obviously, we talk about they won 14 games last year plus 2 playoff games. And I think in every one of those games, you could say Hurts was either the reason or one of the reasons they won each and every game. I don't think he had a bad game the whole season. He's had 2 games where you would probably not say, hey, they won this game because Jalen Hurts was absolutely jumped off the page.
Well, look, let's put it this way. It's some people are saying this is like 2021. I'm not going to go there. That's a little rough. His percentage as a starter is incredibly high. That's another thing that's really amazing. I don't think he's seen the field great. I don't think Brian Johnson is helping him. They got to scheme players open better. That's definitely been a problem. Last week there were some building excuses because of who they went against. They played a similar scheme, but it's not even close to the same as what Belichick runs, his own scheme, which Brian Flores is running, his version of it. They got to get Goddard open. That's a problem. I know someone from another team said to me today that also Goddard could probably help himself get open. Got to make yourself a pass target. It's all fair, but it's got to be better. Now, the good thing is, Mike, because their next game is not till next Monday night, they've got 12 days until that game. They've got time to figure this out. The players won't be in until Monday. The coaches usually get 1 or 2 days off after a Thursday night game, but when they usually reconvene Sunday, they really got to chop this up and figure out why the passing game has not as been dynamic. And I understand that, look, teams saw what the Eagles did last year, throwing over the top, and they want to take away the deep ball, and that's although they got it last night with Devontae Smith. But after the first quarter, Mike, their passing game was non-existent, and that's one area that has to pick up. And look, they've got the good thing is they got the personnel. The offense, I'm not as worried as I am about the defense. I know some people are loving that the turnovers are great, but there are major issues on the back end that I don't know if they're going to be solved right away here.
Yeah, a lot on the defensive side of the ball we'll get to, but you mentioned Goddard. He did have, 7 targets in the game. I think he led the team in targets, but, man, he had, 3 what did he end up with? He only had 22 yards in the game last night. So,
bad.
Well, yeah, he caught he caught up some passes, but just insignificant. So what's going on with Goddard? Why is he posting such low numbers?
Yeah, and look, the other thing, Mike, is Hurts is not throwing the ball within the hashes. He's just not.
6 for 22, by the way, 7 targets. Goddard led the team in targets. He had 6 catches, which led the team, but for 22 yards.
Mike, the problem here is they're not throwing the ball in the middle of the field. It's a problem. This was an issue last year. Every now and then, it's been egregious for the first 2 games. They've got to get, and the other thing is they got to get A.J. Brown on those crossers, those bang play action plays where it's a play action pass. Is what they do with the Titans, and go right over the middle. They're not doing that. I understand teams try to take that away, but Brian Johnson, Nick Sirianni, Kevin Patullo are the main guys who put together this offense. They've got to figure this out. They're very lucky that they won. They played 2 very average teams, and look, they won. That's all. That's in the end. That's what matters most. But they're paying Goddard. Goddard's a top 7 paid tight end in the National Football League. A.J. Brown, top 10 highest receiver paid per season in the NFL. They've got to get these guys to football. And I understand A.J. Brown's frustration. He clearly was last night on the sideline. He has a right to be. They've got to get this guy to football. Think about it. They scored, as you said, Mike, at the top here, 34 points, and people are frustrated, and I'm sure the players are as well.
Well, you brought up, hey, the game felt kind of 2001. Some people have said that. They had to do that. They didn't have the talent. My concern is, okay, they ran the ball 48 times because they had to last night. But my question is, why did they have to? I have A.J. Brown. I have Smith. I had Smith in 2001, but he was a young kid. I had to run the ball because I didn't have the weapons I have now. It's concerning that, yes, I identified that if I can run the ball, I can win this game, but it's concerning of why I need to do that. That's the difference for me.
Right, Mike, a couple things. 2 years ago, they didn't trust Hurts. Let's call it like it is. That's why they were involved in trying to acquire Deshaun Watson. Thankfully for them, it didn't work out. And you mentioned, obviously, they added A.J. Brown, added Devontae Smith 2 years ago. You had those 2 guys with Dallas Goedert, one of the top 5 tight ends in talent in the National Football League. It's one of the best threesomes when you took 2 receivers and you look at it, two receivers and a tight end, and plus DeAndre Swift, who's incredibly dynamic. I kind of laugh at people who want to compare Gainwell to Swift. I mean, come on, we're talking about it's like high school compared to the NFL. Swift is gifted. Gainwell's not as a runner like Swift is. So you put these guys on the field. Look, the more we go forward here with this grouping, they're going to be better, and it's only 2 weeks, and they have time to figure it out. But the Bucs have a pretty good defense. So that will not be a cakewalk next week.
Yeah, let's look at Swift. You mentioned, last week. I said it earlier in the show. I said Adam was on the show. He said Gainwell, not the burst, doesn't have the explosion. So is it evident to you that Gainwell has been Wally pipped, or are these guys going to share the position now?
Well, they have to. Now that it's a 2-horse race, and obviously Scott will be the 3. Penny's useless. I mean, it just is. It's a shame. He's got the size that they would want as a closer and as explosive back to have a semi-limited role, but I had 2 people tell me who I really respect who in the NFL who watched the game last night, and they were watching off TV like we all were. 2 guys chimed in to me and said, "Man, what is wrong with this guy? He looks like he don't want to be out there." I'm like, I mean, it's hard for me to know that, but he didn't have a good training camp. He clearly was a 4th back. They had higher expectations, but Mike, think about this. If Boston Scott does not leave the game with a concussion, and then Swift is, he had I think he got his cleat readjusted, maybe the spikes. Penny never would have played last night, Mike.
Yeah.
Think about that. So, and another thing is they don't have a running back on the practice squad, so they're down to 2 healthy backs right now. That's another story about this game is they got to figure out how to get healthy at that position.
All right. Run game obviously was big, but the offensive line in the run game was even bigger. I mean, there were holes. I think the stat was, 133 yards Swift had last night before he was touched?
Yeah, and the other thing, Mike, is to get to the second level, he could choose the A or B gap. There were so many holes there for him. The A and B gaps are to the right and left of center, and he just had these holes, and he's such a great second-level vision runner. Guy's so explosive. The problem with him is, Mike, over the years is he would get criticized for trying to bounce outside. He's a better outside runner than inside. But last night, Mike, he had his choice. He had a career night because the holes were so big. And kudos to their line who blew the Vikings off the ball. We talked about this in a pregame show. the Vikings don't have a very good defensive line, and we called that one out. By the way, mostly everything we thought would happen kind of happened in the first half. But the thing that surprised us was just the lack of continuity with their passing game. That's the big negative coming out of this game. This is not what anyone wants, starting with the owner, Jeffrey Lurie. Look, they got to get this straightened out. That's obvious.
Adam Caplan, Football at 4 from InsideTheBirds.com and the Inside the Birds podcast. And obviously, the way the game was going last night, they could have ran the ball. Boy, oh boy, they ran for 250 yards in the game last night. So the offensive line did their job there. But the guy who continues to shine is Jake Elliott. He kicked a 61-yard field goal there. That was a huge kick in that game because obviously they end up winning the game by 6. It ends up giving them that extra breathing room where Minnesota has to score the touchdown. This is what happened last week, how big he has been in the 2 wins. It's kind of not talked about a lot, but he's been a big factor.
Mike, he struggled really. I think it was 2020, Peterson's last year, and I know when Tyler Brown and Joe Panunzio and Michael Clay got together, the three of them, and Panunzio being the senior member, he kind of oversees the other two guys. It's one of the things that they really did is they fixed and completely, really cleaned up the mechanics. We noticed on our show 2 years ago, the word around the team was that they cleaned up the operation from the snap to the hold to the kick, the placement to the kick. All cleaned up. He's terrific. I still cannot believe that 61-yarder. Boy, it looked like wobbly, like a waffle. I thought as soon as it came off, I'm like, that's just no chance. And then I keep seeing it go in the middle, and you couldn't tell on TV totally if it went in. And I looked at the ref to hold their hands up, and they did. I was like, wow, this is amazing. He's second 61-yarder. The last one came against the Giants in 2017, I believe.
Yes, it did. 61 yards against the Giants, and that kind of springboarded that whole season. I will ask this question because a lot of people have talked about the punter. Siposs has been elevated twice now. Well, you just talked about they cleaned up the whole thing. The whole Siposs is the holder. Is that going to be something after these 3 weeks where he gets elevated? They're going to have to make a decision, I would guess.
Well, last week he was better. He had one really bad punt in this game. To me, you try to be the best that you can. They worked out 5 punters the last 2 weeks. All of them more accomplished than this guy. Why not replace him? I get it. For field goals, it's pretty important, obviously, for extra points as well, but more for field goals because those are the ones that were super impactful. They got to take a look at this thing. They got it because Siposs is not improved, and that's just one thing going forward with this so-called mini bye week. Maybe they start seriously considering doing something else here.
All right, Adam, I want to flip to defense. It's same thing as offense. I mean, they scored 34 on offense, and we're questioning. They gave up 28, which is, that's a lot. They gave up 364 yards, a lot. 4 touchdowns, a lot. 159 to Jefferson, a lot. But they did create 4 turnovers, and they really were up, 2 scores. They made Minnesota go on a 10-play drive. It basically ran the clock out on them. So you used the word uneven for Hurts last week. I feel the defense, I'm having trouble define what I saw from the defense. Did they do a good job or did they not do a good job?
Well, what happened was when they're up 27-7, they're playing off. They're playing soft coverage. They give up too many plays. And look, the Maddox leaving in the first quarter due to the pectoral injury. I guess the players are talking like he's not coming back. A couple agents I spoke to today said their players are acting like he's not coming back with that injury. So that's a tough one. Mario Goodrich did a pretty good job in coverage. He did some good things. Josh Jobe gave up some big plays. Goodrich, just talking to people about him, he's a guy that probably could get you through it for 3 to 4 weeks. But for the full season, that's a problem. Pretty smart kid from what I'm told. But not a great athlete. That's a problem. They're going to have to start working out nickel corners. It's another issue, Mike. With Blankenship, you hope he comes back. I mean, I was very surprised he missed this game, to be honest with you, because he was able to finish last week's game. I get it was a short week. He was probably sore. Then Gainwell, we'll have to see. Overall, Mike, the D-line's been great. They're great. By the way, Eagles have one of the best run defenses in the National Football League. Boy, they've really improved in that area. That's a good sign. But they're shorthanded at corner now. We'll see if Bradbury gets cleared. There's no lock with a player getting cleared. Coming off a concussion, we'll have to see. It was a short week anyway. But, man, if Bradbury's out, Mike, and they do face, look, I get people talk about Baker Mayfield all you want, but Mike Evans is going to be a Hall of Famer someday, no question about it. 9 out of 10 years over 1,000 yards, and then Chris Godwin, Penn State's own, pretty good football player. That won't be a cakewalk game. Probably they should win that. But overall, Mike, they've got to figure out how to be better on the back end. That was concerning because if Jefferson doesn't have that unfortunate play within the 5-yard line, which I hate that rule, you've got that issue, and team fumbling 4 times and losing them, that's not going to happen every week. And Addison completely beat them. And boy, the communication on the back end was bad, Mike, in this game. So they have some issues to clean up on the back end.
Yes, and we talked a lot yesterday, Adam Caplan, about the back-end issues. Can they be masked by the pass rush? And I don't know that you can count on that every week. Did that happen last night? Did the pass rush mask a little bit of the issues?
I would say a little bit, yes, but not enough. Because you saw what happened. Because once Cousins got time, I mean, he just got into too much of a rhythm. Hey, by the way, he played a really good game. Let's call it like it is,
Let's go real quick. The secondary, as you kind of hinted at, banged up a little bit. Josh Jobe, what do we think of his night and the options they might have to replace Maddox? You mentioned Mario Goodrich, but is he the only option right now, or do you think they have to see if they can cross-train or look outside the organization?
Well, the only guys who have been cross-trained would be Goodrich because he started his career as an outside corner, and then obviously Bradbury in the limited role, if he had to, could do it because he did a little bit of it. You could play more big nickel, which they have. They did this in training camp. They have the safeties to do it. Obviously, it would help if Blankenship gets back. But, Mike, they've got a numbers issue. And if you look at their practice squad, there's really no one else. Mike, as a matter of fact, they just have Mekhi Garner. He's the only corner on the practice squad. And Tristan McCullum, whose brother Zion plays for the Bucks, a guy the Eagles, by the way, were very high on until that draft a couple years ago. That's all they have. So they've got a problem here, Mike. We had said all offseason safety is going to be a problem for the football team. It has been. The other thing is, we mentioned this on our pregame show, that the miss on Greedy Williams as their top outside corner, that was the one veteran they wanted to have. He got cut even before the 53 was initially set. That reared its ugly head last night, that miss, because Job got beat a couple times, one for a clear touchdown on him, and there was a miscommunication on another one. That's a problem, Mike. I get it. The NFC's not very good, but the Cowboys are. That's going to be a battle. When they play those tougher passing games later in the season, Mike, it's going to be challenging.
All right, Adam Caplan, InsideTheBirds.com, the Inside the Birds podcast with plenty more in depth on this game that happened last night. Eagles 2-0. They'll play Tampa Bay next Monday night, and you can hear that game right here on 97.3 ESPN. So Eagles beat Minnesota, but still a lot of questions and injuries that we'll be keeping an eye on next week during football at 4. Adam Caplan, enjoy the weekend, man.
You too, thanks.
All right, Adam Caplan, everybody here on the Sports Bash Live, 97.3 ESPN and the 97.3 ESPN free mobile app.